We just starting the stream. Let me just put some. I had one open that was good today, but I can't remember what it was. Yep, I found it. It's good. Hello, hello. So, coming in. So, yesterday we left off finishing up with the bus. I was able to work a little bit outside of the stream, and I got a few things set up. Yesterday I was having an issue with the transparency of materials. For example, we were not being able to render transparent materials, and I was able to sort that out. So it was mainly an issue with the shader that we use for the pixelation effect. Is this one. Open it. Is it open somewhere? It is. So yeah, turns out it was a learning experience. I realized that the scene color node from the shader graph does not include color from transparent materials, only for opaque ones. So I had to basically do a workaround that. What I did is that I exposed a texture input as a property on the shader itself, and then I'm grabbing the color buffer from the URP and injecting it as this texture. So now it is able to render the transparent stuff. As you can see here, we can. These ones are transparent. Though they do not look like they are. So if we disable both of these lights, I added just for testing. If we bump here the transparency, oops. If we bump the transparency, you can see it changing, right? So yeah, now we have transparent materials rendering fine. So they do not look good, but that's something for us to worry later. So yeah, basically that was what I did yesterday. I was also trying to do some pixel vertex snapping shader, but I could not get that to work. So in PSX like games, they have some effect that snaps the vertex of the models into the pixelated, let's say, fraction of the screen. Because to reach this pixelation effect, we are splitting the screen into multiple like larger pixels, right? And then we are like drawing the entire pixel of a fixed color. But yesterday I wanted to also get this to work with the vertex snapping, but I could not get it to work. It looks cursed, and I don't understand why. I'll show you. So if we go here and I change that to well, now it's not working at all. Oh yeah, because it changed a few things here. Let's see what's the quickest way possible that I can show you. Let me just offset. I'm just creating quickly, real quick here. Yeah, that's not what we wanted. Okay, that's better. We just change the speed. Really small. That's not what I wanted. Anyway, so now we want to add this to the position. So we have the object position. We want another node. It's just a quick example on what is going on with the shader itself. So to look cursed, okay. So don't. So yeah, the main problem with this is it is grabbing all the materials, all the objects that we have in the scene, and it is doing this the vertex displacement as I showed you in the shader. But the real thing is, as you can see, so this grayish part that you can see like here on the side of this sphere is the sphere itself. So for some reason it is creating a new material, I think, and it's rendering this the shader that we created on the side, but we are still rendering the first one here, as you can see, right? So you can still see the sphere here. I don't want this to be visible at all. I want this only the grayish one to be visible, and I don't know why this is happening. This cube works well because we have a material directly assigned into it, so it's not directly being captured by the URP. The bus should be here somewhere as well. I think that is there. Probably this is the bus actually. I don't even know. But as you can see, it's looking a bit weird. I didn't expect the real objects to still be rendered if we are rendering on the onto this shader. Not sure why this is happening. I have my guesses. I can actually do one thing to make sure that I am right. So one of my guesses is that the pixelation blit, this one right here, is not taking into consideration the vertex changes. Because we are getting the camera color target. So I think we should use a different one as the input, but I'm not sure. The way that we are going to discover is that I will comment out the jagged edges, the one that pixelates the image, and if the real model disappears, then I'm right, and then I would know what to do. Let me comment out. No, not this one. Yeah, so I don't think I'm right. So as you can see now, I changed that and the real models are still being rendered. So yeah, my guesses were incorrect. But I don't know what's going on, honestly. So I was thinking that in order to achieve the pixel snapping effect, I would need to have all the materials in the game to be the one with the pixel snapping, which might be something that I'll need to do. But anyway, not our job for now. So I'll just revert back these changes. So now. Okay. So now let's head back to Blender. And we want to finish with the bus. So what we need now is to fix the tires. We need to unwrap them and put some texture to it. I'm just searching for a wheel texture. Hmm. One thing that I'm curious is how am I going to animate this? Because as you can see, I have the 4 wheels here. I could probably delete 3 of them and then leave with just one. What I'll do, I think. I'll create materials. Mm. Okay, so I have my 2 different materials assigned. So the problem is that I'm searching for wheels, wheel textures, but the texture that are showing are like really cool wheels, and I want like really old, rusty ones, you know. Um, mm, I searched before these wheels right here. I could use those. The thing is that I don't want the background. I don't want this background together. I want just the wheel. Actually, just the inner part of the wheel. Let's try to get this. Let's grab 3 ones. What's the name of the inner part of the wheel? Oh, no, it's not. Yeah, I put old wheel, but it's not this one that we want, definitely. Maybe rusty. I want something like this, right? This one should do. The problem is that is the it's not free. One thing that I can do is put a rusty material and then just erase some parts of the texture. Not sure now. Oh, this is a good solution. I think I'll be using this one. Free. It's not that rusty, but it's already good enough because it's old. Okay, I'll be grabbing this one. We're just logging in. That. Cool. We don't even need that much of a resolution. Let me remove this cube because it's cursed. Okay, so that's... Oh, hey, uh, hey Wardstone, how are you doing? So you are streaming. Hello, hello. Thanks a lot for the raid, bro. How was your raid? Your stream? Bro, you guys need to check out Wardstone. He's making a really cool thing on his stream. He's coding with the people who watch his stream, so it's an amazing setup. Yeah, I'm good, good. So yeah, unfortunately we don't have cool like GIFs or animations going. I think I missed this when I was setting up my Twitch stream. Uh, but yeah, I'll probably need to fix that. Thanks for the raid, bro. I appreciate that a lot. So you should really check out Wardstone. Good, good. Yeah, it's always good to learn something. Yesterday during my stream, I learned a lot about the 3D modeling. There was one person that was helping me a lot, and yeah, it's quite good actually to stream to people. People like going in the chat, talking to you, and yeah, you can get a lot from them. I was checking our schedule and I thought you would stream only tomorrow. No, the day before, the day after tomorrow. Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's good. This one is too high poly for the game, honestly. My goal today, so it's the same that yesterday's one, which is the same that the day before. I want to finish this boss final. I've been taking so long to do it, and I don't know anymore. Oh wait, I have... Okay, I can use the texture only and use my model, right? Yeah. Okay, let's try to do this. So yeah, basically my goal for today is to finish this boss and maybe the intro animation, which is the player coming out of the bus stop. So I need to model the bus stop as well. Okay, so I want to grab this, rotate. I don't need it to be perfect. You mean in my project? I really hope it's visible. Otherwise I don't know what I'm doing. But seems like I need this part right here. Can I detach somehow vertices? I cannot. So I'm trying to apply my model into an already existing texture. Not sure if that's the wisest decision. How did the guy unwrap this UV? I'm curious. Wait, this should be good enough. The height map will not work properly, but it's fine. We don't need that sort of precision. So now we can export this. So I was thinking on working only during the stream, but at this point I'm afraid that I won't be able to make in time because I wanted to release a free demo on June. But at this point I'm not sure I'll be able to finish if I only do that during stream. I'll probably need to do that on different times as well. Of course, I'll be streaming most of the time that I'll be like sitting for a long time developing, but sometimes I just like grab like small amount of times during the day. Need 2 materials now. This one I could use the metallic one. Use this. The metallic mat. Mat. This is the height mat. There it is. Okay, I've started to work off stream too. Huh. Yeah, this is actually good. So you can also have like the chat helping out with those, right? The wheels are too way too detailed compared with yeah, that's a good thing actually to have a small community, like people that really enjoy what you're doing and will hang out and help you out. Otherwise, it would be too crowded, and you kind of, I feel like you kind of lose connection with the people because there's too many of them. It's just like Thor says, right? There are goblins. Cool, cool. Have a good rest, bro. Uh, see you. See you later. Thanks for the raid again. Let me see how it looks like in game. Looks okay. The thing is that it's looking like too high of a resolution compared with the bus. But yeah, I'll be sorting that out now. So for the bus, I think I'll assign a different material for the window. We already have one actually. Bus body. And then I'll add a different one. It'll be the window. And then we can bump the transparency of this one. So for this one, I'll be grabbing everything that is here and assign it. Then we can re-export. Okay, so we only have a different material for the windows now. What we can do is We need to change this to specular, transparent. The base map will be this one. Oh. I could put some reflection here. It's looking more like a window now. Something weird going on here. I should not be able to see through here. Oh yeah, I see. Fine. Look better now. Okay, yeah, it's a bit better now. You cannot see through the wheels. Good. Let's take a walk around the bus. Let's see how it looks like. It's looking okay. So yeah, now we need to give the bus a little bit of a rusty material. Maybe we could get like some free. I think I will need to watch a tutorial just to learn how to do this. There's a tutorial here and I'll be following it.
In this Blender tutorial, we're going to be creating this procedural rusty metal material. Now, if you'd like to help support me and also get the project files for this tutorial, then you can do that over on my Gumroad and Patreon with the links in the video description. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to show you the setup that I have. So I just have a sphere right here in the center of the scene, and then I just added a camera and pointed it right at the sphere. And then for the lighting, I also added this Photo Studio 01 1K HDR, and this is on HDRI Haven, so I'll leave a link in the video description if you'd like to download the same HDRI that I'm using. So I just added this in as an environment texture in the world, and then just added this HDRI. So right over here, I'm going to go into rendered mode just so that we can see the preview of the material as we create it. And then right over here are our shader nodes. So I'm just going to click on new, and I'm going to call this material rusty metal. And then one more thing before we get started, I am going to be using the Node Wrangler add-on. So if you don't have that enabled, you can go to edit and then go to preferences. And then right over here on the add-ons, you can just go to the search here and start searching for Node, and then just check mark this Node Wrangler add-on. So this add-on is built into Blender, so you can just check mark that, and then I'll show you how we're going to use it while we're setting up this material. So we're going to be creating two different shaders. We're going to create the metal shader, and then we're also going to create the rusty shader. And then we're going to mix them together and tell Blender where we want the rusty parts to be and where we want the metal parts to be. So let's go ahead and make the metal first. So what I'm going to do is turn this metallic all the way to 1, and you can see that that already looks more shiny and looks more like metal. Now I want to make the base color kind of a gray color, so I'm just going to turn it down, make it a gray color, but you can really make it any metal material that you want. I'm just going to go with gray. And then the roughness here, I'm going to change this to somewhere around a 0.25, so 0.25, and you can see that now that metal is a lot more shiny, and I think it looks a bit nicer. So the metal is really smooth right now, but I want to add just a very, very tiny bit of bump or warping just to make it a little more realistic. So to do that, I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a noise texture. Just drop the noise texture right down here, and then using a feature with the Node Wrangler add-on, if I have this selected and then press Control T, that's going to add this mapping and texture coordinate. Now from generated, I actually want to change this to object, so I'm going to plug the object into the vector mapping right here, and that way the noise texture is going to be placed around your object a little bit better. And then using another feature from the Node Wrangler, you can hold down the Control and Shift key and click on nodes, and then it's going to give a preview of what that node looks like. So I want this scale to be a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to change it to maybe around a 6, just so that we have a little bit more detail. And then I'm going to plug the factor of what that node looks. Control and object to the vector mapping right here, and that way the noise texture is going to be placed around your object a little bit better. And then using another feature from the Node Wrangler, you can hold down the Control and Shift key and click on nodes, and then it's going to give a preview of what that node looks like. So I want this scale to be a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to change it to maybe around a 6, just so that we have a little bit more detail. And then I'm going to plug the factor into the normal. Now when we do that, if I now Control Shift and click on the principal to preview it, you can see that it's black, and that's because we need to convert this to normal data, because you can see this is a gray circle, whereas this is a purple circle, and so this needs to be converted to data that the normal can use. So to convert this to normal data, I need to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a bump node. I'm just going to drop the bump node right here, and then we don't want it to go into the normal, we want this to go into the height. Now you can see that it looks like the metal is really bumpy. Now, it's way too bumpy right now, I just want to make it very subtle. So the strength here, I'm going to turn this way down to something like a 0.0.
Something is not right. Okay, now it's okay.
.15. So very, very subtle, but if you look really up close, you can see that it's just a little bit warpy.
Yeah, it's look better.
Just unplug this, you can see without that, it's just kind of smooth and simple. It's very subtle, but it just adds a little bit more detail and makes it slightly warpy. So that's going to be it for our metal material. I think that looks pretty good. So what we could do is we could actually join these together in a frame. This is totally optional. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I thought it'd be pretty cool to do in the tutorial. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for a frame. Just drop the frame right here. And then what we can do is we can actually add nodes in this frame. It'll just make it kind of easier to kind of move it around. Now this texture coordinate and mapping, I want to use this for other textures that we're going to be using later on in the video. So I'm actually going to drag these two up here. But then I'm going to box select all these 3 nodes and I'm going to drag them and drop them inside the frame. Now if I click on the frame, I can drag it around and it's going to drag all these nodes around. And then right now it says frame, but we can actually edit what this is called. So if you press N, that's going to open up this side panel here. And if you select the frame, you can see it has a name and a label. I'm going to call this metal. And then I'm going to also make the label metal as well. So now you can see that it says metal right there and we can kind of drag this around. So using frames is just a really great way to keep your nodes organized, but it's totally optional. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. If you want to, you can just select it and delete it. I just like using it sometimes to organize my nodes, but it's not going to change the look of the node setup. Alright, so we've made the metal material. Now I want to make the rusty material before we add them together. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for another principled BSDF and I'm just going to drop it right here. And then again, I'm going to press Shift A and add a noise texture. I'm just going to drop the noise texture behind
it's
this
all about
principle.
noises.
And then again, I want this mapping to be plugged up to this noise texture because I want it to be using the object coordinates. So now I can Control Shift and click on this noise texture to preview what it's looking like. Now the scale here, I'm going to turn this up to like 60 because I want it to be very small. And then the detail, I'm going to turn this all the way up to 16 because I want it to be pretty detailed. And then the roughness, I found that something like a 0.6 looks pretty good. Just adds a little more roughness. Okay, let's take the factor and plug this into the base color and then Control Shift. And click on the principled. So you can see that it doesn't really look like rust because it's just white and gray. So what we need to do is add a node in here to edit the colors and tell it what kind of colors we want to have. So to do this, I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for a color ramp node. And I'm just going to drop the color ramp node right here. And now we can go ahead and edit these tabs, and we can also slide the tabs around. So I'm also going to Control Shift and click on the color ramp just so that we can preview what that's seeing. So I'm going to take this black tab and just kind of drag it out just to make there be a little bit more black. You can see the more I drag it out, the more black there's going to be. So I'm just going to give it a little bit more black. So I'm just going to bring it to somewhere around there. That's pretty fine. And then I'm going to click on the white tab and I'm going to bring this out a little bit as well. Now this one I kind of want to be a light brown. So I'm going to click on this tab right here and that's going to bring up the colors. And I'm going to bring this down kind of to the orange and then make it a lot darker. So that way it's kind of a nice light brown color. Not super saturated. You can see if I bring it up here, it's a lot less saturated. Whereas if I bring it down here, it's going to be way more saturated. So a little bit desaturated, just kind of a light brown, something like that. Okay. Now I want to add another tab in here and I want to make this one a little bit more of a reddish brownish. So I'm going to click on the plus right here and that's going to add a new tab. I'm just going to bring the tab a little bit closer over here and then I'm just going to click on the colors, and this one I want to be slightly more red, so I'm going to pull this a little bit more towards the red because I found that rust does usually have a little bit of red. It's kind of a brownish reddish color, so I thought that would look nice if we just added a little bit more of a red color. It's still pretty brown, but just a tiny bit of red, and then you can just kind of make it a dark color. Okay, so if you look at it, you can see this is what mine looks like, and I think that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to Control Shift and click on the principle, and then you can see what it's doing. Now right now it doesn't really look like rust, but if I click on the color and drag it into the normal, it's going to add a lot more bump and will make it look a lot more like rust. Now again, we need to convert this to normal data, so I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for another bump node and just drop the bump node right here. And then we don't want to plug this up to normal, we want to plug it up to height, and then we'll convert it to normal data. And now you can see that's bumping out and it looks a lot better. Now it's way too...
Wait. We don't want to put in normal. How can I unplug this? Yes. Yeah. No. He said that we don't want. Okay. Here's not the normal one. We want the height. How can I unplug this?
Too strong right now, so the strength here, I'm going to change this to like a 0.16. I think that looks a lot better. And now you can zoom in here and you can see that there still is bump, but it's a lot more subtle. All right, now one more thing. I do want to adjust the roughness because you can see there's this roughness value here. I'm going to take the color and plug it into the roughness. Now, when I do that, you can see it makes everything really shiny. So I'm going to actually edit those colors to make it a lot less shiny. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for another color ramp. And I'm just going to drop the color ramp right in here. Now, when I drop it in, it doesn't really do anything. But I'm going to actually switch these. So if I pull this out and then pull the white one in, you can see now I've flipped it. And so now it's very, very rough. If I Control Shift and click on it, you can see that it's very white. And if I drag this over, you can see it's going to start to add more and more of that black color. So where it's white, it's going to be very rough. And where it's black, it's going to be very shiny. Because if I Control Shift and click on this, you can see right now it's white. So now it's going to be very rough, but if I drag this way down, you can see now it's going to be more and more shiny. And if I Control Shift and click on this, you can see those black parts are going to be more shiny. So I'm going to Control Shift and click back on the Principled and really just play around with it and get it to how I like. I want it to be pretty rough, but some parts I want it to be just a little bit shiny. And it just adds more detail and makes it look more interesting. So I think that looks pretty good. That's pretty good for me. Now later on in the video, I am going to play around a little bit more with this shader and just make it look a little bit more. More interesting, but for now, that's going to be great. Okay, so I want to put this in a frame. So I'm going to select this frame, press Shift D to duplicate, and just drop it right up here. And then I can just box select all these nodes, and I can drag them and drop them into the frame, and that's going to add it in the frame. And then again, if I press the N key, it's going to open up this tab right here. I can just change the name. I'm going to call this Rust, and then right down here, Rust as well. And then I can press N to close that frame. So now we have the rust right up here, and then we have the metal right down here. So now I want to mix them together. So to mix these two together, I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a mix shader. So mix shader, I'm going to drop it right down here. And then I'm going to take this BSDF, plug it up there, and then this one down here. So you can see that if I zoom in, it's actually kind of blending them together evenly, and that's really not what we want. If you drag the factor here, it's going to make it all metal or all rust. What we want to do is we want to tell it that some areas are going to be rust and some areas are going to be metal. So to do this, we're going to need to add another texture. So I'm going to actually drag this up so there's a little bit more room in between them, and then I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to add another noise texture and just drop the noise texture right there. And then again, I want the vector to be plugged up to the vector right here. Okay, now I can Control Shift and click on it to preview what it's looking like. So I want the rust to be very detailed, so I'm going to turn this all the way up to 16, and then the roughness, I'm going to change this up to 0.9, and we will play around with this value later, but for now I'm going to change it up to 0.9. So now what I can do is I can take
0.9 or 2.9? It's 0.9.
this factor and plug it into the factor of the mix shader. And then if I control shift and click on the mix shader, you can see it's starting to do something, because what it's doing is taking the values of this noise texture and is telling it that some of the values are going to make it the metal and the other values are going to make it the rust. But right now it's still way too subtle, so what we want to do is we want to make this noise texture very contrasty. So to make it very contrasty, I'm going to press Shift A and search for another color ramp. Just drop the color ramp right here, and then I'm going to control shift and click on it to preview what it's looking like. So I'm actually going to drag these two values out towards each other, and you can see that as they get closer and closer, it's going to be a lot more contrasty. So what's going to happen is wherever it's black, that's going to make it the rust, and then wherever it's white, that's where the metal's going to be. So if you want to have more rust, you can drag this kind of out this way and there's going to be more black. If you want there to be less rust, you can drag it over here and make the black more subtle. So really just get it to whatever value you want. You could play around with this. Now I can control shift and click on it and you can see that's what it's looking like. So now some parts are the metal and some parts are the rust. So just play around with the value and get it to the amount of rust that you like. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now if I zoom way in, it kind of just looks flat. So what I want to do is...
it's not looking good. Roughness 09, details 16.
I want to make where the rust is actually kind of going down into the metal. So what I can do is I can actually take this color ramp and add it into the bump of the rust, and then that'll make the rust looks like it's going down into the metal. So I'm going to click on this bump here, press Shift D to duplicate it, and just drop it right in here, and that's going to connect it up. Then I can take this color and stick it into the height. And then the strength here, I need to turn this all the way up to 1. Now you can see, if you kind of zoom in here, like right over here, you can see now it looks like the rust is going down into the metal. And if you control shift and click on this bump, you can see that's what it's looking like. So it's adding all that detail in there and it looks pretty cool. And if I control shift and click on the rust now, you can see that's what the rust is looking like. So I'm going to control shift and click now on the final mix shader and just see how that's looking. So there are some things you can play around with. Of course, you can play around with this color ramp right here, and that's going to tell it how much rust and how much metal there's going to be. You can also play around with this roughness right here. So if I turn it down, you can see that it's going to make more bigger patchy areas of rust. So if you wanted to have bigger areas like that, you could totally do that. If you wanted to turn this value up, you can see that it's going to make everything more subtle and the rust is more evenly placed around the metal. So if you just want a tiny little bit of rust, just some little grainy rust, you could turn this all the way to 1. You can see that's what it's looking like. If you want to be just patchy, you could turn it down. I like somewhere around, you can see that this stick it into the height. And then the strength here, I need to turn this all the way up to 1. Now you can see, if you kind of zoom in here, like right over here, you can see now it looks like the rust is going down into the metal. And if you control shift and click on this bump, you can see that's what it's looking like. So it's adding all that detail in there and it looks pretty cool. And if I control shift and click on the rust now, you can see that's what the rust is looking like. So I'm going to control shift and click now on the final mix shader and just see how that's looking. So there are some things you can play around with. Of course, you can play around with this color ramp right here, and that's going to tell it how much rust and how much metal there's going to be. You can also play around with this roughness right here. So if I turn it down, you can see that it's going to make more bigger patchy areas of rust. So if you wanted to have bigger areas like that, you could totally do that. If you wanted to turn this value up, you can see that it's going to make everything more subtle. So if I turn it, so it's adding all that detail in there and it looks pretty cool. And if I control shift and click on the rust now, you can see that's what the rust is looking like. So I'm going to control shift and click now on the final mix shader and just see how that's looking. So there are some things you can play around with. Of course, you can play around with this color ramp right here, and that's going to tell it how much rust and how much metal
color
there's going to
ramp?
be.
Sorry. Which color ramp?
Shader?
Okay, this one.
And just see how that's looking. So there are some things you can play around with. Of course, you can play around with this color ramp right here, and that's going to tell it how much rust and how much metal there's going to be. You can also play around with this roughness right here. So if I turn it down, you can see that it's going to make more bigger patchy areas of rust. So if you wanted to have bigger areas like that, you could totally do that. If you want to turn this value up, you can see that it's going to make everything more subtle and the rust is more evenly placed around the metal. So if you just want a tiny little bit of rust, just some little grainy rust, you could turn this all the way to 1. You can see that's what it's looking like. If you want to be just patchy, you could turn it down. I like somewhere around 0.9. I think that looks pretty good. That way there's some rust just in little bits, and there's also some patchy areas, but you can really play around with this and do whatever you like. Alright, so I really like how that's looking, so I'm going to render this out and show you the final image. And there we go, there is the final.
Cool, so now we have a cool shader. I want to understand how to get textures from... Okay, so now...
Hello everyone, today we are going to learn basic Blender tutorials how to export texture. As example, we have this cube object, and if you want to export this texture on cube, you can go to UV editing, click in here UV editing, and then on image menu you can choose save as. Next, you need to save the image into your folder, like I will use document, and we can save into document. You can click save as image. You can go back into layer.
So you've created an awesome procedural material, like this one for my procedural texturing course, but now you actually want to use it in your work. If you're working only within Blender, you might be able to get away with just rendering it as is. But with a complex material, this can be slow, as the whole shader needs to be evaluated many times during the rendering process. On the other hand, if you're taking your material to another program, like a game engine, rendering the material as is isn't even an option. Both of these issues can be solved by baking the material into image textures. When you think about baking, maybe baking lighting comes to mind. We're not doing quite the same. We don't want to evaluate any scene lighting. We'll just be baking the results of some of our own shader computations and putting them into image textures. That means that in the end, the render engine is still responsible for all the lighting and everything, so the lighting stays dynamic. The only difference is that now, instead of doing a whole bunch of computations, the render engine can just look up values in an image texture. So the trade-off is that our procedural material gets frozen, losing the ability to animate parameters, and the texture has a fixed resolution, losing the almost infinite scalability of procedural textures. To start baking, we first need a few preparatory steps. First, we need to make sure that our object has proper UVs. The image textures will be mapped onto those UVs. In this case, we just have a plane which already has default UVs, but if you have some more complicated object, make sure to unwrap it first. Also note that whichever UVs are selected in the UV panel will be used for baking, so if you have multiple UV maps, make sure to select the right one. The next thing we need is an image to bake to, so let's click the New button.
Wait. now? Gosh, I got lost 1 second. Okay, so he opened the UV. Go to the UV editor.
For the first texture, let's call it diffuse color, or you could call it albedo, depending
Is
on your naming conventions. Then we can set the resolution of the texture we want. In this case, since the plane UVs take up the whole UV space, I'll be using the same aspect ratio of 2:1 as the plane, so that the texture resolution is the same in both directions. So let's say 2000 by 1000, but this will vary depending on your needs. We won't need an alpha channel for any of our maps, so we can uncheck that. Now, probably the most important setting for our new image is whether or not we want it to be 32-bit. If we don't check this, it will create an 8-bit buffer. This might be fine for some color data and can be a reasonable choice if you're exporting to game engines. But for anything else, it's generally a bad idea, especially with things like displacement, which can have negative values, as those will be clamped to 0 if you bake to an 8-bit image. So unless you have a very good reason not to use a 32-bit image, it's best to always enable it. For use within Blender, I always use 32-bit images for everything, including colors, as it makes sure that everything is properly represented and there is no data loss, avoiding issues like color banding. Now, with our image set up, we need to tell Blender that we want to bake to this image. For this, we need to add an image texture node to our material and select our target image. This node doesn't need to be connected to anything, but it does need to be the active node, as that's how we specify which image texture we want to bake to. We also need to make sure that the object itself is active and selected. If we head over to the Render Properties tab and make sure that our render engine is set to cycles, we can find the baking panel. Here we can select what we want to bake. By default, it's set to combined, which will bake everything into one image, including the color and all the lighting passes.
That's amazing.
The result is basically an image that represents how the surface looks in a given environment. There are also several other modes that bake different lighting passes and some limited utility passes like roughness. If your whole shader is represented with only principled or diffuse shaders, you can bake the color by selecting the fuse mode and then unchecking direct and indirect lighting, leaving only the surface color. You can also bake the roughness by selecting roughness mode, but that's about it. All the other information can't be baked directly. This won't do for us. We have a more complex shader which includes a velvet component, and we want to have a map of everything that we plug into any of the shader nodes so that we can have a completely identical result after baking. Luckily, there is a simple way to bake any arbitrary value from the tree. If we connect a node to the cycle's material output, it gets rendered through an emission shader, so the value is just being output directly to the render result. This is perfect for us as there is a baking mode that enables us to bake the emitted values. It's conveniently labeled emit. This allows us to bake the output of any node, except for shader nodes. And this is exactly what we want, to be able to reconstruct the shader exactly from the baked maps. The last setting that we need to pay attention to is the amount of render samples. This will determine the amount of samples in the baking process as well. Since we aren't baking any lighting, we really don't need many samples, as the emission has no noise at all. The samples are just for anti-aliasing in this case, so something like 16 is plenty, but in the interest of speed, in this quick demo I'll just set it down to 4. So let's start baking. For the first texture, which we named diffuse color, let's accordingly connect the color which we're feeding to the principled shader. color, let's accord demo, I'll just set it down to 4. So let's start baking. For the first texture, which we named diffuse color, let's accordingly connect the color which we're feeding to the principled shader. To recap, let's make sure that our target image texture is selected, as well as our object and the desired UV map. Then, with our bake mode set to emit object, to recap, let's make sure that our target image texture we're feeding to the first demo. So some
Material output, so cycles. I don't think that will work.
something like 16 is plenty, but in the interest of speed, in this quick demo, I'll just set it down to 4. So let's start baking. For the first texture, which we named diffuse color, let's accordingly connect the color which we're feeding to the principled shader. To recap, let's make sure that our target image texture is selected, as well as our object and the desired UV map. Then, with our connect the color which we're feeding to the principled shader. To recap, let's make
But what if okay, so let's grab. I think I need to create a new mix shader with this vector, then this color, and then this color. And this will be the color only.
Make sure that our target image texture is selected, as well as our object and the desired UV map. Then, with our bake mode set to emit, we can finally press bake. After a bit, we'll see the result appear in the image. Editor. Then let's make sure to save or pack the image. Otherwise, once we close our Blender session, the result is
I'm a bit lost now. I want a color, and maybe the base color, right? Um, and now I need to find the color. How can I expose this? Color attribute nodes. I will use a color ramp anyway. Probably a stupid way to do it, but bake again. Yeah, now it looks better. So we want to bake again. Oh, I think we're getting somewhere. Yep, definitely. This is the diffuse map.
Lost, though Blender will show us a reminder when exiting if we forget to save. For the image format, if you're baking 32-bit images, as we are here, I highly recommend using EXR. This is the best format to preserve all the data, as it supports 32-bit depth and will preserve the negative values. If you're working with 8-bit color data, a format like TIFF should work well, but as I said before, 32-bit is definitely preferable, and in that case EXR is the way to go. You can always select 16-bit half float if you need to save space. And in that case, with 8, I highly recommend using EXR. This is the best format to preserve all the data, as it supports 32-bit depth and will preserve the negative values. If you're working with 8-bit color data, a format like TIFF should work well, but as I said before, 32-bit is definitely preferable, and in that case EXR is the way to go. You can always select 16-bit half float if you need to save space. Now let's repeat the process for the other shader parameters. If we want to do the roughness next, we just need to create another image, then repeat the process for the other shader parameters. If we want to do the roughness next, we just need to create another image, then connect the roughness map to the output,
Roughness is 0.5 all the way. So we can just... Wait. Here's 0.25. I want to put like a hard value here. So I want to put like this value right here into the mix shader. How can I do that? Maybe split or something. No. I'm doing something wrong here. Nah, it should work. Okay, so we need to change this one. Yes. And then I can do the same thing. Good.
And don't forget to update the image texture node. We could change the image in this same node, or we can just add a new one, since we'll need to input the resulting images into the material later anyway. Then, with the new node active and set to the proper image texture, we can press bake again. Then it's just a matter of repeating this for the remaining parameters. So that would be the height map, the moss mask, and the moss color. So having baked all the parameters, we can now replace practically the whole node tree with just a few image textures. So that we don't mess up our existing setup, let's just duplicate the final bit of our node tree with the shader nodes. This also allows us to easily have access to the original tree in case we need to bake again. Alternatively, we could put the new setup into a whole new material, but let's just keep everything here for now. Then all we have left to do is connect all the baked maps to the corresponding parameters. This is one of the few cases where plugging a color into a value socket is okay, since all the
Image new. Then we go for normal. This to be normal. Need to wait it to bake. The problem is that I already have an albedo texture. Wait a second, I could... I think I know what I can do. So if I go to Blender, if I add a texture here, image texture, open. Does that work? Like putting the raw beetle into the ESDF? Or do we need to like UV it somehow? Once it finishes baking, then I'll be trying.
channels have the same value, and therefore the computed luminance is the same as the average of the channels, which is also the same as each individual channel. Now, if we look at the result, it behaves identically to the fully procedural version. The only differences are that it renders much faster, and if we zoom in, we see that we don't have all the small details, as we're limited by the texture resolution. The difference is especially noticeable if we bump up the subdivisions. This is really all there is to baking any parameters from the tree. With this, you can bake all your procedural textures to accelerate your renders or to port them over to other software. But now let's get to some extra tips. Earlier I mentioned how baking means that we lose the ability to animate our textures, but there is actually a way to get almost the best of both worlds. Often we don't need to animate parameters throughout the whole tree, so say we have a big heavy part of the tree that doesn't require animation. Well, in that case we can bake the result of just that part and plug it into the rest of the tree. There is no reason why we need to limit ourselves to baking just the final values that get plugged into the shader nodes. We can just as well bake any value in the middle of the tree.
This is not looking good. This is not like how a height map would look. I was afraid that this was going to happen. But anyway, let's... Probably because we are using the object and not normal. Or UV. Anyway, let's use this. Let's start changing the color here. Cool. So yeah, I'll need to rebake. Oh, let's see the normal. This one we want to change to be the diffuse. Bake it again. Oh, I didn't select it. Hey Wasabi, how you doing? Yeah, same here. So what's going on? What's the news? Yeah, so it seems like I'm learning how to bake textures from the Blender, which is pretty useful, honestly, because I was not liking how flat the bus was looking, right? So now I have a way to work that out. Also, yesterday, remember that we had issues with transparent objects being rendered. So I was able to fix that actually. So as you can see, the windows now are transparent and they are rendering fine. You go in the game window, they are rendering fine. We were able to fix that. But yeah, another day, another drama. Now we are facing different issues, but not related to that. So yeah, I think it's part of the process. Yeah, it's cool. It was actually something regarding the Unity render pipeline. I was using a node in shader graph that only consider like opaque objects, so that's why the transparent ones were not visible. So I had to like recreate the node from scratch that considered the transparent ones, and then they are there. So yeah, it's cool. So yeah, lots of learning today actually. But there's one thing that I cannot get right, which is some of the old PSX games, they have like vertex snapping. So basically you can see like the image wobbling around a little bit, like the models, they start to wobble a little bit once they move on the screen. And I wanted to achieve the result, but I'm having problems as well. So I just posted a question on Unity forum, and let's see if someone is able to help me. But yeah, we're almost finishing actually the bus finally, after like almost a week of work. So we just need to animate it. I have some things to update here. Here is a normal map. Oh, one thing that you could help me. Yeah, it's a shader. So I need to apply like a vertex. I need to recalculate the vertex of the mesh to snap to the same grid of the pixelation one, you know. But the problem is, when I try to do that, it happens, okay. So the shader, it's actually changing the mesh vertices, but for some reason the rendering pipeline is rendering the same object again, as if it was not changed on the vertex. So you have like duplication of everything, basically. One with the vertex snapped, and the other one like regular, just like they are here. So yeah, it's something probably from Unity that I am not considering, you know. But one thing that I want to ask you actually, as you have more knowledge in Blender. So I created this kind of rusty material following a tutorial, and now I need to export the normals, right? Into a texture, but it's a bit weird, the normals. Collision maps. No, but it's not actually a collider issue. It's more like a rendering step. So I'm not quite sure how does that work. I might need to read the docs. Yeah. So it might be some limitation on Unity's side, or I am doing something wrong. Probably a little bit of both, right? I will show you. It's a bit cursed, okay, so don't worry. it will look cursed. Because during the rendering step, I do the vertex change, and then I do the color process effect, right? Let me show you. If I go here, if I put it, I wanted it to be applied before rendering, because then the vertexes are in the right position when the rendering starts, but it actually does nothing. I don't know why. And the first, this is like how, on which step we want to apply the effect, right? The first step on which you can visualize the change is after rendering prepass. Yep, this is the one. So as you can see, it's really cursed. So as you can see, the bus is on the same position, nothing is happening. 1 second, I messed up. Okay. So as you can see here, this is the bus, okay, and I'm doing like vertex offset by noise value, right? So that's why you see like the floor wobbling around. But that is the bus. This thing in the air is the bus, and the bus like is here at the same time, you know. Same thing with the floor. As you can see, the floor it's wobbling around, so it's doing the right thing, but it's still there. You can see some spots of the floor there. So yeah, it's a bit cursed. So the real bus is still here, you know, and while the rendered, I want the rendering to be there. Yeah. I mean, forget about the effect. This is just like a testing that I did. I can reduce that, and you'll be able to see it properly. But let me just show you with the sphere. This sphere will look better. Yeah, but it's probably some rendering issue. So as you can see, the cube is a good example. You can see the real cube here, and also its cursed version right at the side of it, you know. The cursed version is the one that we want. We want only the cursed version. But for some reason the real one is still appearing. Yeah. I don't understand why. So yeah, as of now I'm just leaving this aside to focus on other things. Probably with a clear mind I'll be able to fix that later on. So now I'll be applying the new generated textures for the bus, and let's see how it looks. It should look better. Wait. Yeah, so basically the offsetting of the not looking good. So basically the offsetting that I am doing is kind of the shader is not correct because I made it really aggressive, so I could visualize what is going on. So that's what I did. Oh, we got a raid. Hey Space Frog, thank you for the raid. Frog raid, thank you so much. Yeah, welcome guys, welcome raiders. How are you guys doing today? Thanks for that. Thanks for the follow. I was sent by the frogs. You were one of the frogs. Is that right? Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. So we're struggling a little bit with Unity here, like normal day. So yeah, I think the normal map is not working properly. This is the weirdest the frogs did. So I think the normal map is not working good. I think the generation of the normal map is wrong here. It should be related to the normal. Dissociative identity disorder. It's like multi-personality disorder. I mean, that sounds reasonable. I'm no psychiatrist or, you know, psychology professional to say you're right, but it makes sense, at least. So, do frogs suffer from multi-personality disorder? That's the main question now. Yeah, oh no, I did not. I did not fix those. Oh, I see. I see, that makes sense. Okay, they changed the name. I didn't know about that actually. Okay, so I didn't fix the N-guns, so we are. Oh, thanks for the follow. Yeah, we just got the. Oh, we just got the followers go. That's cool. Thanks for reaching out. So we actually have the Discord channel already. I just did not link it yet. So, but you should be able to see that from the profile. The next goal will be probably the affiliate, like Twitch affiliate, that is coming on the 50 followers. But yeah, thanks for the follow, guys. Thanks for the support. I really appreciate that. unfortunately, I'm already late for my 9 to 5. So I will need to leave. But yeah, thanks for this, thanks for the follow, thanks for the support, guys. I'll be raiding someone else now. It will be like a raid train. So who should we raid? Let's see who's online now. Do you guys have any suggestion? Any creators that you like? I know a guy. I know a guy on which I will be raiding. This guy is really smart. He works on Unity and he has a pretty cool setup there. I'll be raiding Rockadoodoo. Check. Yeah. So I'll leave you guys in good hands. Thanks guys for being here. Thanks for the support. I'll be here tomorrow at the same time. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Frog. Thank you. See us.